and there was the stage manager. And there was the guy was counting down. Like, there were cameras, and they heard the music come up. 3, 2, 1. Theme song starts, and he points to me. And I had a rush, unlike anything I've ever felt, and since felt very few times since then. I knew I have to do this for a career. With no resources, with no knowledge in doing this, I produced a town hall for Cornell's president and had a blast doing it. If I could do that in college, imagine what I could do for a career.
From the cubicle to the lab, the studio to the war room, climbing up the corporate ladder, or joining a scrappy startup, experience a day in the life of the jobs you want.
This is the Experience a Day in the Life podcast. We interview professionals, entrepreneurs, and recent grads about what a day is actually like on the job, hour by hour, or as we like to call it, their ADITL, spelled ADITL, which stands for A Day in the Life.
This podcast will inspire you to gain experience beyond the classroom and launch a career of your own. We're your hosts, Chris DeBow
And Matt Poe.
Welcome to part 2 in the 2-part Producing a Better Career series. In part 1, we went through hour by hour a day in Kyle Scott's life as a producer for NBC News Digital. In this episode, we'll take you through Kyle Scott's career journey so you know what skills and experience are necessary to land a job as a producer. Kyle did not study media or journalism in college, but that didn't stop him from applying to NBC's Page program. He actually thinks that's why he got accepted. You'll learn in a second that Kyle's career opportunities taught him about how the media operates editorially, technically, operationally, and more. Let's learn how he did it so you can too.
Kyle attended Cornell University and studied applied economics and management with a minor in law and society.
Little bit of a shift.
So not really, and people will say that a lot. And for me, it's never been so much about a specific major or a specific minor. It's about getting a degree in something that you're passionate about, something that you're interested about. Because when you're 18 to 20, 21, the time you're in college, you're such a different person than you're going to be in your early 20s, than you're going to be in your late 20s, which is where I am now. So just having a degree in one thing doesn't mean it's a shift. It's all not really a long, it's just a journey. And something that I love, Steve Jobs said this in a speech, a famous speech, I think it was like 2005 at Stanford, but he said, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect the dots looking backward. So for me, it makes complete sense that I was an applied economics and management major, because were it not for being that major, I certainly would not be where I am today.
And why is that? Is that because of the coursework? Or?
No, it's because it sets me apart. And something that I often talk about is selling yourself based on a story. So the story for me was how I found my passion despite my major. So I came in saying, look, you have all of these people who are applying as communication majors. Everybody's interested in communication. I'm interested in the business of communication. And that was different. So I was combining a passion for media that I discovered through my extracurriculars, but also combining it with my passion for business. So it's for me, it's always about the marriage of creative and business.
You mentioned that media was something you were always interested in. What did you want to be when you were growing up?
So it always depends upon age, right? In high school, I think that's the most relevant time, because that's, I think, when a lot of us develop our real personalities. I did the morning announcements, right? So it was
me too.
Yeah, right? And there's a reason why you're here doing a podcast, and there's a reason why I work in media. There was something there at the time that when I was doing the morning announcements, I just knew that I had to be in this field. And so it started out as, I want to be a journalist. I want to be a news reporter. And then that slowly evolved over time, but it was that passion that I discovered in doing the morning announcements that led to me doing college radio. And then just being a DJ on college radio led to me running the radio station, because I was very passionate about the business operations. So that senior year of college, I had a weekly rock radio show that I did with a co-host. We won a Best Paired Show for 2 years in a row.
Yes.
And then I also did a biweekly public affairs show with Cornell's vice president of communications. His name was Tommy Bruce. Now, there was a moment in that show. So I pitched the idea of doing an in-person interview with Cornell's president, David Skorton. And I didn't want this just to be a radio interview. I wanted this to be a video interview. And not just a video interview with radio. I want it to be a live town hall. So I literally pitched to the university. I want to do a live town hall with Cornell's president. I want to host it. And I want to do it on the radio and also do a webcast on Cornell's website. You know what they said? Yes, let's do it. So I had no idea. I had never produced anything. I mean, I did the radio, but like not like this. So I did this, and I was co-hosting it with Tommy Bruce, the vice president of communications. And we were in Willard Straight Hall, which is the main student union. And there was the stage manager. And there was the guy was counting down. Like there were cameras, and they heard the music come up. 3, 2, 1. Theme song starts, and he points to me. And I had a rush, unlike anything I've ever felt, and since felt very few times since then. I knew I have to do this for a career. With no resources, with no knowledge in doing this, I produced a town hall for Cornell's president and had a blast doing it. If I could do that in college, imagine what I could do for a career.
Right after graduation, Kyle went on to work as a page for NBC. The Page program is a paid 12-month rotational program where entry-level workers are exposed to NBC Universal's areas of the company's portfolio. And they get to give cool tours of 30 Rock as well.
And then I went to Education Nation, which was a unique combination of the business and the creative side. So Education Nation no longer exists really formally at NBC News, but it was the brainchild of who was then the president of NBC News, Steve Kappas. The idea was to partner with our local affiliates. So we have 200-something local affiliates throughout the country. We partnered with them and some local sponsors and local government and the local educational system, and we brought an educational town hall. So technically, I was a coordinator, and then I was promoted to associate producer. My role, because it was a small team, I got to do a little bit of everything. That was a very foundational part of my career because I learned how to produce. I learned how to do journalism. I learned about very important lines between sponsorship and journalism. That's a line that's very important in news not to cross. So, we had editorial independence, but we were still sponsored. So it was a lot of learning of what journalism is, right? Because I mentioned I was not a journalism major. So this was sort of like figuring out in a very safe environment where it was very low on the totem pole, but I was able to get a good foundation in that. So I did it was a lot of research, a lot of writing briefing packets, but that was so useful to my career because I learned how to do all of this.
So then the next position from there was working more on the corporate side.
It was this transformation project. So as part of Education Nation, we had a national town hall that was broadcast on MSNBC. The person who ran that, he was executive producer of NBC News specials, Mark Lukashevitz. He was put as executive in charge of this transformation project, which was looking to change culture, workflow, technology across NBC News. Really evolve it for news gathering for modern time. So he knew my work, so he recruited me to work for him on this transformation project, which, again, combining my passion for business with creative. This went from journalism, which I would say a little bit further left, and left in terms of like creative. And then I went a little bit more on the business side, which was a consulting, really an internal consultant for a couple of years, for 2 years. And it was helping Mark and the team sort of do like everything an entry-level consultant would do, honestly. Pitch decks, arranging meetings, doing strategy sessions, like being the person who's like writing the notes on the whiteboard as we do a brainstorming session, then putting the notes together and sending out an email about here's everything that we talked about, here are the next action steps going forward. And that helped me really understand what it takes to run a major media organization.
What are some things, like specific things you picked up from that?
I picked up the power of working as a team, which was the biggest, most important lesson that I learned from that, right? Because you can't just assume that a boss can say something and it happens. Culture is a big part. And now that I'm in business school, it's just like learning about how important culture is and how hard it is to influence culture. It can't be top down. It can't be. My old boss, Mark Lukashevitz, used to say, let me see if I can get this right, culture eats strategy for breakfast. You could have the best strategy, but if you can't change the culture in a way that supports the strategy or in a way that will enhance the strategy, your strategy will fail.
And then you also, during this time, worked on the weekends with Weekend Nightly News.
Yes.
How did that opportunity come about?
I knew that when I left sort of hard journalism with Education Nation, I was going into consulting and I wanted to keep my editorial skills sharp. So I told my boss, on the weekend, I'm doing this job during the week. I'm happy to come in on Saturday and Sunday and volunteer and learn about how a show works. So he connected with who was then the executive producer of Weekend Nightly, Jamie Kraft, who now runs Dayside for MSNBC. And I worked under him as sort of an associate producer on Weekend Nightly.
You volunteered?
I volunteered. There's not paid extra for this. But it's so important. If you don't know something, figure it out and do whatever you can to figure it out, because that is how you get ahead. Right? Like sitting around doing this sort of consulting job, and while it was a busy job and very involved and very important, it wasn't going to propel me forward within a news organization completely. Like, it was really good to be able to understand from a bigger picture career how a news organization works and how media works. But my next job, there's no career progression in that within a news. If I wanted to go to consulting, work for Deloitte or something like that, sure, that would have worked. But that's not what I wanted to do. So I knew that I had to keep those editorial skills sharp. So I did Weekend Nightly, and I forget exactly how I broke it up, but I also did the assignment desk. So it may have been like a couple months on Weekend Nightly and then a couple months on the assignment desk. But then I also did the assignment desk to understand how the center of the news gathering organization works. So the assignment desk is sort of where all the breaking news comes in, then they coordinate all the coverage. So where are the crews going, where are the correspondents going.
You mentioned that Steve Jobs quote about looking back and connecting the dots, right? When it was 2014, right, and you were kind of shifting around different parts of the business, did you have this grand plan in mind? You're like, all right, I need to get this skill, and this is how I'm going to do it, and this will get me here? Or did you just kind of go with the flow and, take an opportunity as it came?
Yes and no. It's both. No, honestly, it's both. Because I do deeply believe that if you eventually want to run a media organization, which I think I do someday, you have to understand how the media is made. So I have to know how to edit. I have to know how to shoot. I have to know what everybody does, how the back-end technical infrastructure works. Because if you want to be managing these people someday, and you want to be managing these functions, it's extremely important to know how it works. So to that point, yes, I did understand that I had to understand the business. I had to understand the production. But also I believe deeply in following the opportunities as they arise, as long as it makes sense. As long as it's somehow connected and you can sort of see a future through it. Now, with Mark Lukashevitz, who everyone calls Luke, because his last name is Lukashevitz. So with Luke, what I saw was working for someone who I admired. And it was nice to be able to touch all across NBC News, but really it was him. I really wanted to work for him because he was running NBC News specials. Like, this guy is an amazing producer, and I knew I could learn so much journalism and so much production from him. And I was able to learn so much journalism and so much production from him while also adding value to what he needed. So that was really a personal decision on I wanted to follow this person. I wanted to work for this person. I want to learn from this person. And also, it's an incredible opportunity to learn about NBC News and meet a lot of people in higher levels within NBC News.
You wanted to look for a new opportunity. How did that come about? You went to Today Show.
Today Show.
Yep.
So that was a long-time dream of mine, to work for the Today Show. I think a lot of people who work in news always dream of sort of working for the flagship morning show. Today Show was number one at the time. So it was something going into NBC News when I was a page. I said, I want to work for the Today Show. And an opportunity came up. There was a maternity fill-in position that opened, and they knew that I was doing, sort of weekends on Weekend Nightly, and I still had an interest in news. And by that point, I was doing transformation for 2 years, and we accomplished a lot of our goals. So it was winding down to a large degree. And like I said, I wasn't going to be a career consultant. That's not my career path. So the opportunity aligned where transformation was dying down, and there was an opportunity to go do a maternity fill-in at the Today Show to sort of test the waters over there. So I went over to do the overnight associate producer shift on the Today Show.
One segment Kyle worked on was the Orange Room trending segment, but the majority of his work was crashing breaking news pieces overnight.
Because 7 a.m. is right around the corner, and that piece may have to go at 7 o'clock in the morning. So you have to move really fast to make sure that it can be, not only researched, but the correspondent needs to get their track in. So something needs to be written for the correspondent to track. So that has to be done. And then once the correspondent track comes in, it needs to be all edited together. It needs to be approved by the senior producers. And then it needs to sort of make it into the queue for the tape person to then play it out at the right time. So there's all these steps that have to happen to get to 7 a.m. It's not just let's write a script now and just do it. No, it needs to be researched and vetted and all that.
Right. So getting more specifically on the steps on how to produce breaking news fast, what are some technologies or softwares that people in that job should know like the back of their hand so that they can...
iNews. So iNews is I think it's made by Avid, which is a software company that makes a bunch of sort of media software, but it's the rundown program for building a news show. So all the rundowns.
And what is a rundown?
A rundown is the order of the show. So what the teleprompter copy will be for the anchor to read, where the teases are going to come in, where the tape spots are going to play. It has all of the sort of out cues. So when the correspondent hears the last line of the piece, or the director hears the last line of the piece, they can sort of cut back to the talent, and then also they sort of know, okay, now I get to talk again. Is a simple way to put it. But it's the breakdown for the whole show. That's all made in iNews, and iNews has a bunch of other features as well. But that's the main point of that software. And then so everything is cut on Avid Media Composer. In digital, so what I do, I work on Premiere, Adobe Premiere, but the editors, so the broadcast and cable editors, are on Avid, which is a complicated editing software, big technical infrastructure behind it to make all of the sort of computers and connect and play out. But it helps to know how to edit, because if you're researching for video, you want to understand the best video to get for the edit. So it needs to have good audio. It needs to be like peak action. You don't want to send your editor like the camera looking at nothing, for example, because that's not useful to anyone. So you have to sort of know how to edit and what makes for a good edit. We also use Media Central, which is another sort of proprietary Avid technology that allows you to look in our archive and see what media is available. And so you can sort of log and like do like rough cuts in there, but they're even like pre-rough cuts. They're like mark it in and out and send it to your editor. But that's all on the broadcast sort of cable side. Digital is a completely different workflow. And I think and obviously you need to know how to write, which is not necessarily a technical skill, but writing, not only for people in media, writing hands down is the most important skill anyone should know how to do ever. Like writing is so important. Whether you're writing an email, and this is sort of like a side note, but just like everything is communication, and you have to be able to communicate well to do anything in life.
Kyle's next career move was working as an associate producer for NBC News Digital.
So the maternity fill-in was ending, and I sort of wanted to move into digital. Like I got to see the Today Show, which was great and awesome, but I saw sort of this other future in digital. And I realized that what I want to do is sort of be able to shoot, produce, edit, like do it all myself. And you can't do that in broadcast, right? There's the camera guy who does the camera, or the camera woman who does the camera. The editor who edits, the correspondent who does the track, or the producer would write too. But everyone has a job. I wanted to learn it all. So then I went over to digital, where you get to do it all. I have to shoot, I have to edit, I have to write, I have to report. I sometimes do my own voiceovers, so the entire production process is mine. And that's great because I get to take ownership of it, and also learn about how to do all those different parts of the production process.
How'd you learn to shoot?
I took a camera class at NBC, and then I just figured it out myself. But again, this goes back to going on the weekends to work at Weekend Nightly. I would borrow the camera and just take it out and shoot stuff. And just like practice, figure it out.
He was doing that for a little under a year when he was approached to help launch Better as a new NBC News Digital vertical and promoted to producer.
You said that you started it, you basically launched it, right? So what was that process like, launching a whole new initiative? What needs to be involved?
Right.
Who are you talking to?
So I talked to a number of people within NBC News who have done this before. I had some ideas, some people gave me some ideas, and then structured it into, we started with 6 at the time. 6 different ideas that touched across all the different areas that we cover. So we had a personal finance series. We had a life hack series. We had a career interview series. And those have since morphed and evolved, but that's where it started.
Just want to kind of get a sense of what the team looks like. Who are the bosses? What are their titles, I guess? And then how closely do you work with them?
My boss is a supervising producer, so I fit within the digital original video department.
The digital video department is broken up into 3 verticals, which Kyle mentioned in part 1: Better, Think, and Mock. And then there's also mini news documentaries that are produced to delve deep into a topic or an issue.
So my boss oversees all of that, and then we roll up into NBC News Digital. So my boss's boss is the executive editor of all of NBC News Digital, so NBCnews.com, and then all of our platforms and properties. So OTT app, the mobile app, and then we get distributed. The videos specifically get distributed to MSN, Yahoo. They go to Apple News, Huffington Post, and a couple of other partners.
Cool. What is OTT?
OTT is over the top.
Okay.
It is Amazon Fire, Roku, and Apple TV. So
Okay, great.
Those little devices that go, I guess, over the top of your TV. It's such a jargony term that I'm
is
so
so
used to saying
jargony.
OTT, but that's what it is. It's those
Cool.
like not quite cable, not quite internet. It's the middle ground.
Kyle is attending NYU Stern School of Business for his MBA. So let's talk about why he chose to go back to school in the first place.
I think it's really important today to have a credential in something beyond your bachelor degree. You have to have a master's, and obviously have to. I put in like giant air quotes. But for me, I'm looking long term down the road because I'm always learning and I'm always trying to grow and I'm always thinking like 5 steps ahead because you have to. So for me, when I'm like 40, 50, or even younger, maybe like 35, I don't see myself holding the camera anymore, right? Like I want to move beyond that. I think it's really important to learn how to do it. But my next step is a job that doesn't actually do the production. It's more like managing a team, like some sort of video team where I know how to do it. I've gotten good at it. But for me, it's not so much about like the hard business skills. It's really about thinking and learning how to think differently. So once you find yourself surrounded by the same type of people, right? So I've been surrounded by journalists for a long time. And to a large degree, I am a journalist. I work at NBC News. I do news stories. So I am also a journalist. But it's important to get outside of that sort of single mindset sometimes, because once you surround yourself by everyone else, you're no longer challenging your thinking anymore. So for me, being able to take what I learned in journalism, being surrounded by journalists and applying it to a business classroom is fascinating. Like to be able to just look at every single problem through a different lens. And I've never really believed in like traditional career paths. Like everything, and it all goes back to like work is life, like life is work, and like a career is just like part of life. Like it's not, I am a journalist, period. It's like, yes, I'm a journalist, but also I'm interested in the business side, and I'm interested in media, and I'm just interested in a lot of different things.
That wraps up part 2 in the Producing a Better Career series. Huge thanks to Kyle Scott for sharing his wisdom throughout this Experience a Day in the Life series. If you haven't already, be sure to listen to part 1 in the series to experience a day in the life of a producer at NBC News Digital.
So they say you can't get a job without experience, but need experience to get the job. But luckily, we have quite the experience. You can join our team and experience a day in the life of the jobs you want by applying to be a student editor. Regardless of your major or amount of experience, this is the perfect stepping stone into any internship or career. Find more info and sign up at xadital.com/students. That's xaditl.com/students. Thanks for listening. Head over to xadital.com. That's xaditl.com. There you can find the show notes for this series and more A Day in the Life articles. And you can get to know us and our guests more by joining our communities on social media. Follow at xadital on Instagram and on LinkedIn by searching for Krista Bowe and Matt with 1T Poe.
If you learned something in this episode, please take some time to help our mission by leaving a positive rating and review of the show. Each week, we bring you a new interview series with guests from different jobs and different industries. In each series, we'll live a specific day in the life, hour by hour, and experience their career journey. So don't forget to subscribe.